Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much for staying on this afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to the Southampton edition of the Quiz the Guru session. An opportunity for you in the audience and for the panel here to talk openly, ask questions of each other, and basically share their knowledge and experience over the last few years. And there's a wide variety of expertise in the panel today, so I hope that things go well. First of all, I'd like to start from one end, if each of the panellists will introduce themselves, and then we'll move on to a few poignant questions and we'll take it from there. So, we'll start with Tony.
My name's Tony Elvidge. I work for a company called Control. This is the only opportunity I'll ever call a guru, so I'll do my best to take full advantage of it. I've been in the communications industry for getting on for 20 years. A company that started off with serial communications, and now we're doing layer 2 network switches. And my particular interest here is obviously in CCTV and the use of PoE to drive CCTV on devices.
My name is Andrew Denton from a company called Meatech. Meatech design and manufacture control systems for CCTV. And I've been around in the industry for approximately 12 years now, working with cameras, domes and control systems.
Good afternoon. My name is Nigel Aitken. I work for the National Security Inspectorate, NSI. Our interest is in the certification, the quality and the assurance of organisations that provide security services, not only in the installations and technical side of the business, but also for guarding services. And this includes ARCs, video receiving centres, and we have also broadened our interests into FM for security companies that are offering those services.
Good afternoon, my name is Phil Hutton. I've been in the industry since I was 15, so about 8 years now. I started off with installation companies and worked through different manufacturing organisations, and now responsible in Tyco for specification of our product range, including access and video to consultants and large end user organisations.
Hi, afternoon. My name is Tarek. I'm from Ava Information. Ava is the designer and manufacturer of IP cameras and hybrid NVRs. I think we're quite known for our hybrid because this is the transition time where everybody's moving from analog to IP, and we provide that platform to allow to bridge the gap between the two. I've been in the industry for quite some time. I also have a technical background, so I'm coming from a telecommunication, networking and wireless. So any technical questions, or feel free to ask.
Good afternoon, my name is Carlos Bradis. I work for D-Link as a business development engineer. I've got a background on and off in the security industry of 15 plus years. Originally started out in R&D, working at a company called Photoscan, producing all their keyboards, matrices and so on. I spent a bit of time within the storage industry as well. I've been involved from the manufacturing side through to R&D, through to installation, through to specifying for tenders.
Okay, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm Paul Hennings. I'm the CEO of the IPUs Group and editor of IP Focus magazine. My background is technical. I was a software and hardware development engineer in the publishing industry a million years ago, and from that moved into sales, marketing, and then involved with this industry for the last 10 years. So let's first of all open the questions to the floor and see how we get on, and if not, I've got a few up my sleeve. Anybody like to kick us off? Here we go.
Yeah, my name's David Sowell. I have my own security consultancy. One of the things that's always concerned me with the move to IP has been and it was touched on by one or two of the speakers this morning, has been the ease with perhaps which people A, hack into the system, and B, where
other equipment could be plugged into the system and used to provide false information or whatever. And I'd just like to hear the panel's views on how that can be stopped, how big a risk it is, and so on.
Okay, we'd like to take that one to start with, Tony.
Where's the best place to start? I think a lot of switches, and that's obviously where I'm coming from, have pretty high security on them. In terms of someone unplugging something and plugging something else in, certainly our switches, you can assign a particular MAC address to a particular port, so only that device with that particular MAC address can talk to the system. There are other security elements to it. And I'm sure when we come down to D-Link, they'll say exactly the same, that they have systems where you have particular IP addresses which are on the white list, particular IP addresses that are on the black list. So there's ever-increasing security built into the switch end of things.
I think that your security is as strong as what you make it. Also, there are a lot of features now on switches, as it's been mentioned, that will allow you to restrict access. There is VLANs, there is IP MAC port binding. So if you don't have a particular MAC address or a particular IP address, even if you plug yourself, you want to get access, there is a radius authentication. So the features are there. It's just basically educating the users on taking full advantage of these features that are usually in, a small layer 2 or normal switches.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with Tarek. I think the biggest problem is there are part of the industry that actually still haven't come up to speed with what you can do. And that's where the greatest danger lies, because those guys are not up to speed with the technology nor the understanding to actually allow you to do that. So there is that risk, even with the equipment having all the features that it's got, that people don't actually put it in place.
Yeah,
and that's very difficult.
Cheaper, presumably, as well.
I'll actually potentially throw it back to you on that one, because that's something that you as consultants could actually specify and say, right, to your clients, speak to them and say, as part of the commissioning process, make sure that this and this happens, and that would be the way to force the issue rather than to leave it open, which is what's happening at the moment, potentially.
That's why I asked the question.
I think on one level we've only got to look at the various passwords that were stolen from various companies, and I read a list somewhere that the most popular password was 1234
Yes.
and AAAA. Now, if people are going to be, just taking up on your point, people are going to be that foolish, then what can we do?
Well, I better reprogram my phone.
But what can we do? We can provide the hardware, and other people can provide the software. If that's not used by the end user, then it's wrong to say, well, I'm sorry, it's their fault, but it's an education process, isn't it? It's a, look, we've got these systems in place, please use them.
I think, I was talking to Nigel about it earlier, the thing is here where consultants need to be educated in this, and definitely need to be specifying it, as you said, as part of the performance specification at the beginning of the project, and making sure that the people who are putting forward equipment that doesn't meet those things, but also forcing people to use passwords. But of course, as soon as you do that, you've got to note all the passwords to something. They become an item that can be sold.
There are various, to be honest, there are various programs out there that you can actually just congregate everything all in one package and have obviously a master password. I mean, the classic for that is KeyPass. You can go in and put there all the passwords you want, and it's got one general password to actually enter into it. So there are software packages out there that answer the question.
But that's what the hackers are going to try and get into.
Yeah.
And that's
Well, I would suggest
the risk is that in
well, I would suggest the only other way you can physically get around it is to actually say, right, I'm going to put this on a PC that doesn't run on the network.
Yeah.
Then you are ring-fenced completely. So if you've got something, it doesn't need to be a high-performance machine. You can put it on a laptop in a corner. As long as it's not on the network,
It'll be on a piece of paper and a file.
nobody can get to it. Exactly. I mean, we can go back to that sort of level, because that does give you the ultimate security in a filing cabinet. Only somebody within the building can get hold of it. There are different ways to crack the nut.
But then there needs to be some standardisation.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
That's a question I was coming to, how that is done, because otherwise everyone will do it differently, and there won't be a standard which consultants can say you must do this.
Yeah, I think a lot of funders now address the issue. I think most of the hacked equipment is usually when the user leaves the default password. So, you know, as soon as I know the IP address, then I could log in. But now vendors are going around that by introducing a wizard that will force you to change the default password before you could go through the setup. And there are ways that, but again, the vendors, there's only much you can do.
Then every service engineer gets access to that password because they have to, and then you widely more risky.
Yeah, it's a two-way thing. It's the end user and also the vendors or the manufacturers that need to come to a way.
But as far as the consultants are concerned, there is a sad lack of standards and codes of practice that exist in order to sort of unify the offerings of the consultants.
Is that something that?
Well, something you can do.
Well, yeah, I would love to, but I mean, can we come and raise it with NSI, or who should we raise that?
Well, I would suggest that the British Standards Institute would be a good place to start.
I think if you're dealing with the corporate as well, there has to be some responsibility from the IT department. And if it's a corporation that's got a domain controller, then you're looking at Windows authentication as a first pass, and then a password into the product that you're trying to get into. So I think there is a double level there. But I think the IT department has to be responsible as well.
The IT department, as Tony said, the worst for having the 1, 2, 3, 4 type passwords.
I didn't necessarily want to infer that. That was a sort of generic members of the public passwords that were hacked into, I can't remember, but millions and millions of passwords were made available somehow or other, and then analysis was done on those. So it's not the IT department, it's us.
Well, yeah, but people work in IT departments and they make up the passwords. And I mean, I've actually had to have access to various things at different times. And invariably, two big organisations in London I could name, one which is a big property management company, and the other is a bank, and they have exactly those sorts of passwords that you were talking about, the simplest possible passwords you can.
I think we're intrinsically lazy. So I don't know about you, but I have 3 standard passwords I use, and I use those passwords on every site I go to. And if it's not one, it's one of the other 2, because I'm getting old, so assume it's one of those 3.
I think manufacturers have certainly got something to do to enforce strong passwords on equipment. That would be a big selling point as well, you know, to do something like that.
Absolutely. I mean, customers tend to go to an architect if they want a building designed, but they don't tend to come to a consultant for their security architecture. They tend to go to an installation company.
But it also implies that password protection isn't good enough. We ought to be looking for a different solution.
Yeah, fingerprint or
Yeah, some sort of
biometric
solution. Yeah.
It's just another layer.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
And as you were saying about IT architecture, intrinsically in the architecture of the network, it has to be borne in mind right at that very, very early stage. Now, where you're coming in, what level of enterprise you're dealing with, whether there is any real design to the network or whether it's just happened, that's another story. If you're putting, and maybe this is one that I'm going to throw over to Phil, if you're putting in an individual VLAN for your video, then presumably you're taking responsibility for all that. And as such, you should be able, you are the architect of your own network, and as such you know what the best practice is and how that should be implemented, and then that's over to these guys to be able to say, okay, we acknowledge that best practice and we introduce it into our certification. Yeah.
There are ways of looking in your access system as well, so you control logical access to your network with your access system as well. So if somebody swipes into the building, you can't then use their password remotely, so it limits it. And similarly, if it's a building that forces you to swipe in and somebody's held the door open for the person to walk in, they can't then log onto their PC because they haven't swiped into the building in the first place. So you can have that as a layer as well.
Ultimately, there isn't just a single solution for any of this. It's going to be a combination of solutions that are best suited to the problem at hand. But as far as certification is concerned, until it's written into a code of practice and it becomes an accepted practice, we're kind of stuck there.
I think what maybe a concern would be that we go off and we try and reinvent the wheel, when in truth the IT industry and all the people who've been putting multifunctional devices and printers and print servers and all the rest of it, they've been through all this already, and now we're just trying to reinvent it when perhaps we just should engage with those people on the other side.
The dark side. Yeah. Well, the other problem is, of course, that a lot of these protocols are put in place by the IT departments, and they are the very people that get involved if somebody forgets their password and it has to be reset. And so, in order to make an easy life for themselves, it becomes a simple regime. So it is a question of horses for courses. If you're going to have a robust regime, the IT department will have to put into place something to deal with the outcomes.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Any other questions from the floor? Either on this subject or any other subject? No? Come on, Russ,
I think you touched on that there's nothing in place for the NSI. Is that something that you now are going to action?
Well, I can't say that we are. I don't know. From the point of view of standards that apply to consultancies, we don't audit consultancies, we audit security companies. That may be something that we would choose to get into in the future. As far as I'm aware, we have no concrete plans to do that. Typically, a code of practice would have to be developed first. Now, we do develop codes of practice in conjunction with other service providers, in conjunction with technical experts, if you like. So it may be that in the future we could do something along those lines. As far as I'm aware, we have no plans to do that at the moment. Plenty of other plans, but consultancy, not as far as I'm aware.
We get a lot, as a manufacturer, we get a lot of people that know analog, but they have no idea when it comes to IP. We now have a plug-and-play IP device, which you don't have to do it. You just plug it in one end, plug it in the other end, and it works out all the IP addresses for you. Whereas when you put in a system together, a complex system, you need to be knowing how to network. And the likes of Tabcom, I always suggest you should go on a Tabcom course. They do several layers of knowledge. Tabcom, there are others out there, but perhaps there should be a thing for an analog system, and then there should be something for an IP system.
But as we have been saying over lunch between a number of people, the revision of standards tends to lag behind the industry. And unfortunately, IP is something that's not particularly well represented in the standards. I'm sure there will be people who disagree, and there is some provision for it in the standards, but it's, shall we say, not to the satisfaction of many of our approved companies. I've had a number of discussions with people who have indicated that they feel that they are well ahead of the standards game. And it is always playing catch-up. And as we said this morning, we really don't have a lot of choice in that, because technological advancement tends to precede control its use. Yeah? And the same thing might be said of consulting. You know, there are different people out there that are offering different products, different services. How do you pull those together to write them into a code of practice? I don't know the answer to it.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Is the consultant that should be discussing this with the end user to say this is what you need to put into place. I agree with you wholeheartedly there. You know, because there are so many specifications you see that are still saying an IP system will be used, a VCR will be used for data retrieval.
Yeah.
And they're the big names out in the field that are doing that, and they're getting paid money for doing that.
But it's exactly what we said this morning, isn't it? You know,
Sorry, I apologise. I didn't attend this morning's.
That's okay. I'm quite
I
happy.
was out there, but I didn't come in here. So
Quite happy to repeat myself. Yeah, I mean, what we said this morning was that there are technological solutions available for pretty much any requirement that exists today, but we have to make sure that the correct solution is deployed in order to solve the problem. It is essential that an appropriate risk analysis is conducted and that an appropriate requirement specification is done, and that the purchaser of this service or product is fully aware of the implications and the benefits of the options that are available. And unfortunately, in too many instances, the good practice, if you like, of following the project path is ignored. Perhaps because of a lack of understanding, perhaps because of lack of time, but nonetheless it is. And so sometimes an inadequate or maybe over-specified solution is put in place. Perhaps they'd be very happy with it, but it might have cost them a lot less than it would otherwise have done. Quite how, as I said, a code of practice is put into place.
I think there is similar. There is a code of practice for the IT services, the ITO. So I don't see why there isn't one for the security, especially now. It's
a broad brush though, and it is a scalable solution, but it doesn't. It's not a code of practice per se. It is a set of guidelines.
Yeah.
And my background is in IT, and I'm an ITIL qualified practitioner. But it doesn't answer the questions for you. It tells you what you have to consider.
Yeah.
And I kind of assume that you know that already.
Well, absolutely.
You know the things that have got to be done. It's convincing your customers that they've got to pay the money to go through the stages of an appropriate risk assessment, specification, education, and decision making. And as I say, I don't see how that can be built into a code of practice as yet. Perhaps it can, but it's more likely to be you that can answer that question than me.
Consultants really take into consideration the case history and study how successful robberies of various sorts, whether it's of information or whether it's of assets, have been successful. I mean, one of the oldest ones, and I'm sure everyone's familiar, is the door contact on the door. No one can get through that door. And then someone comes along with a chainsaw and cuts the middle out of the door. Door contact's still in place. No alarm.
But providing consultancy is not like installing a system. You can't go around and swing a hammer at a detector if you're a consultant. The potential outcomes from the provision of consulting service are huge. I mean, there's such a wide variety of possible products that you might offer the customer.
Exactly.
Many of them are quite intangible.
Yeah.
Can I just pick up on a point that you made? We said earlier, as manufacturers, we have all of these potential security features built into our equipment, which then we discussed is less likely used by many of our customers. Maybe there's something that we as manufacturers should be doing to make sure that the benefits, the features, the security features of our products are made available. Not made available. People are aware that they exist.
all the right people are referred.
So that, you know, maybe there's a role in, and you talked about education, maybe there's a role in terms of making sure that fairly easy to read white papers are created, that these are publicised, and so on. And that's maybe part of the mix to try and increase that level of security within the bit that we impact on, which is the IT bit.
You're talking about educating the consumer.
The end user, yes.
The end user. But that is such a broad church, isn't it?
Okay, well then it's not
a huge
because there are roots to it.
Exactly.
Maybe not educate, just frighten.
So many poor consultants that specialise in a very narrow field.
Yeah.
And the client wants a security solution, and they do that little bit, and it's floating around and doesn't provide a holistic solution.
I think the other area that is also the strength of the manufacturers to take on board the fact that if you don't get a warranty unless you have set things up the way that they should be set up. And we know, because we can interrogate. So unless it's done properly, then you don't get the warranty. Or, you know, it's carrot and stick. There's nothing wrong with that. And if everybody wants so desperately trying to go to the other table,
we do deal with a number of customers that perhaps shouldn't be installing our equipment. And we're quite happy to sell it to them. I'm not sure that if I went back to them and said, you're a complete nincompoop, I'm sorry, and the warranty no longer exists.
Your sales director.
I wouldn't dare do that, would you? Exactly.
so who's carrying the risk now then?
I think the issue is also that there's still a certain element of people installing this kind of equipment that expect and want plug and play out of the box and don't want to have to consider complicated setup of products, and therefore manufacturers tend to send out a product that defaults that will accommodate that. There's a simple way to solve this, and that's to send out boxes that are configured in a certain way that you can't just plug it in and play. You've got to go in and
But they return it.
But then you don't sell it.
They return it. It's not working.
Yeah.
But does this mean to say that we are de-skilling the workforce, the people that are installing these things?
Yes.
Because they're plug and play. You know, the days of perhaps an engineer are over. The days of a fitter.
Well, what you're getting now in a lot of IT companies, putting IP systems in.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, and then they come on the phone. It happens to us. Oh, we just installed this. How do we do so and so? Whereas the integrators, they come to us. They pay for training. You know.
But isn't the difference too, that the difference between my generation, or me personally in IT, and my kids and their approach to IT, is that I do at least look at the manual before I install something. They just install it and expect it to work, and then shout about it when it doesn't work. So maybe we need more older people installing it.
You know, as the government's raising the retirement age, maybe that would be easier.
I'm depending on my kids to pay for my retirement.
Okay, any other topics from the audience? I think one thing that we've been talking about a lot, and I'll run this right the way across the panel here, is the education situation. Now, I'll pose a proposition and see what level of agreement we get. Is education the reason that IP is not being deployed on a wholesale basis? Tony first.
That's not fair. I had to do first last.
You can give the best answers.
I wouldn't say that at all. I think there is this, and you touched on it earlier, about the analogue and the IP. Analogue has had 20 years, is it? Probably more. Experience. People know that this piece of wire goes to that piece of wire, and that goes onto the camera. With an IP network, the data, because of the nature of the network, and there's benefits that gives, because it gives you the redundancy, can go any which way. So there's no longer a single wire from beginning to end. And so that's why I think people are frightened of IP. I personally think that IP is jolly clever and is very much the way to go, because it gives you all of those further benefits, that redundancy, that security, and so on. And so, yes, there is a lot of education that needs to be done to explain to people the benefits of IP and why it makes life initially a little more difficult, but eventually a lot easier. And one of the key points I made in my presentation was that switches are complicated, but they're actually not that complicated when you come down to it. Most of them are just a little embedded browser-based system where you just click boxes. The benefits that gives you will far outweighs the let's start learning what IP actually means. So it's worth going over that hurdle, in my view, to get the benefits of IP.
I think it used to be a start, 7 or 8 years ago, it was a size-driven thing when it first started to become mainstream IP security systems. I would include access control as well as video. But now that you've got such advantages with megapixel cameras and so on, analog is can't really compete against that anywhere. So it's got to be the way everything is going, but it's educating people. Educating end users is not a definable task, is it?
But it's things like this seminars and other seminars that other organisations do.
There's no end users here, and I think I'm the only consultant on this.
I think as far as end users are concerned, though, they don't need to know that it's IP or any other kind of installation type. What they need to know is the benefits they're going to get out of the system, and that it's going to be reliable.
But that's a dangerous, isn't it? They've got a picture. And they don't say, but it's a picture that you can zoom in, and you will still get the detail of someone's face when you zoomed into something that's only a tenth of the picture size.
Yeah, but the benefits on it, if they want ANPR or some sort of facial recognition or some other benefit of zone surveillance and all those sorts of things, they don't necessarily need to know that it's IP. All they want to know is that it's got a bunch of solutions.
Definitely, 100%. They do need to know.
Yeah.
Purely because there are so many people that you say, how are you going to partition this system? Many people don't partition the system, and then when they're putting 100 megapixel cameras on their network, and they then start shout and scream at you when, my network has gone crash. I went to a school. There was only 25 cameras on the system, and at break time, when the school broke, he gave them the wireless for all the kids to use their system. There was Panasonic cameras on the system. There are others out there, but Panasonic cameras were running on a system, and it was crashing every time. Their email went down, all their signage went down in the school, and I said, there we go. That's your problem there. You put it on a system. You haven't partitioned it off. You've given them a separate. You haven't given them a separate bandwidth, and they've just gone. Yes, thank you very much.
And then they do the backup over break as well.
I think again down to education. Whoever's looking after that network should have known that.
Who is providing them with that information? Who is their consultant? Who is the expert that they are getting to evaluate?
And this is the education within the integrators as well, because there's integrators that haven't got an idea about the IP side of things. They've got the analog, they know the analog.
But they are the people that do need educating.
Yes,
I agree with you.
That's
why it needs to come back to regulation.
I think the problem is you've got companies that are in that, predominantly been in the analog sector and are moving over to IP. The issue they have is they have a staff that they still require to keep running the business. So you'll get service guys being told, you can go on a training course, and they've got a choice. Do I go on a training course, or do I earn more money? And they want to earn more money.
So it still pay its people the same rate if they go on a training course as if they're out in the field.
I totally agree. But the problem is that's how it's sort of measured, is how long will we survive?
They're going to go bust, and rightly so.
Ultimately, that is what's going to happen. But there is that situation where you've got people that
know the analog inside out, and they'll keep trying to stay within that part. The company say, okay, you can go and do training. No, that means I'm going to lose my overtime. I'm not going to go. And there is that sort of mentality and attitude out there, even though they're being offered to do training. And it's almost having to be pushed into it to actually go and do it. Where, you know, coming back to what you were saying, there needs to be a holistic approach. If that company wants to survive, then they need to be going and getting their staff, forcing them to do it, rather than giving them the option. And that's the problem. It's not being forced, it's an option to them.
It's also down to the manufacturers. They need to be saying, right, you're using our IP kit, you need to be certified, you need to come on a training course.
Yes,
That's the manufacturer's responsibility to do
some
that.
sort of certification.
There is a lot out there.
But again, it's like we mentioned, you know, IP definitely is going to take over analog. It's already 2012. You know, the graph is hitting each other's, and without IP, we'll never reach megapixels. We'll never get an analytics. And IP have changed the market landscape. You mentioned a lot of IT guys now getting involved. So for them, it's easier because they have the skill set to do it. But they just need to learn about
security skill set.
That's what I was going to
well,
say.
they have a networking skill set, but for them to learn about you know, a field of view or the type of lenses, you know, it's not a rocket science.
We're not just talking about, well, we shouldn't just be talking about video. We've got to be talking about access control, intrusion detection, fire.
That's right.
Physical stuff and training the guards on how to use all that.
Sure, that's correct. These are big projects, but I think more of the IT now, they're targeting their existing clients.
This gentleman hit the nail on the head when he said about they just cut a big hole in the chain with a chainsaw in the door. The first point of contact is your perimeter detection first, isn't it? And you know, you can have you have an IP camera outside that's looking there, but what's that doing? It's just looking across the thing. There's no alarm activated to that outside working hours. You know how?
Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but when you find an IP camera looking at the entrance, and the guard says, "Oh yeah, someone came in, and you know, I saw them come in. Yeah, and what did you do about it?" Well, no one told me I didn't do anything about it.
A video motion detection on an IP camera with a black screen. With analog, you used to have a black screen on an alarm. It used to come up with a picture. Nobody does that anymore.
No, well, we still specify that. If you get an alarm in a certain area, that camera has to be shown. All the instructions of what you do. I mean, but I'm talking about, you know, big integrated systems. I'm talking about.
I think my point was that with the IT channel, it's not hard for them to learn.
No, I understand.
But with the traditional analog, you know, learning networking, I think it's a big jump. But there is a lot of manufacturers that have with that.
Training is the issue, isn't it?
And a very related thing to what Eric was talking about this morning is, you know, learning how to use 360 and 180 field of view cameras, because, you know, you're not going to get any benefits from that unless you know how many to use and how to position it, because it's completely different from using conventional cameras, conventional fields of view.
As a consultant, what do you do with your lighting for CCTV?
Well, obviously there's got to be sufficient light for whatever camera you're specifying in a particular area. So, yeah, we specify the light levels for particular areas where we're putting CCTV. We would always do that. I know it. It's things I'm saying, really. Too many consultants don't do that. Oh, I've got a camera there.
What they call a one-liner is a responsibility of the integrator or to ensure that sufficient light level is there. Megapixel, prime example. You need a higher light level with megapixel than you do a normal analog camera.
We're back to the risk analysis. And
Absolutely.
That's
what
where
you
you
start
start.
for everything.
We're back to that.
Okay then, gents, I'm afraid we're going to have to draw to a close. We've done pretty well. We've stuck on just a couple of topics, surprisingly, today, which it's just a couple of good ones, yeah, some interesting. This video content will be available online, up on YouTube.